Welcome. You are right on time. Today, we're going to be talking about one of the spiciest topics in watch collecting, clomages. You've probably seen them, watches that aren't quite replicas but aren't really original designs either. They sit in this weird gray zone, a little too close for comfort but just different enough to avoid lawsuits. And that's what makes them kind of fascinating. Before we dive into specific brands though, let's get one thing straight. An homage and a clomage are not the same thing. An homage is a respectful nod. It borrows design cues from a classic but reinterprets them through its own DNA. Maybe new proportions, a different dial layout and dial furniture, a unique bracelet, or a movement choice that gives it individuality. Done well, it feels like a respectful admiration rather than imitation. Some great examples: Laurier's Olympia, which channels the vintage Paul Newman Rolex Daytona. Veia's G5 Pacific, inspired by the Rolex Explorer 1655, or Vario's Versa, which offers a bold, affordable alternative to the JLC Reverso Duoface. A clomage, short for a clone-homage, is something else entirely. These are near one-to-one recreations of famous luxury designs, where the main differences are the logo, maybe a dial color or handset tweak, sometimes a PVD case, and of course, the price tag. It's a formula. Swap the branding, modernize the material here or there, and sell it to people who want the look without the 5-figure invoice or the 5-figure servicing. Now, these definitions aren't official by any means. Watch forums and of course the YouTube comment section love to argue endlessly about what qualifies as which. But for this video, these are definitions I'm working with. So why do people buy clomages? Sure, the price is the headline, but I think it's a little more nuanced than that. Clomages often add things enthusiasts actually want. For one, you've got wearable case sizes instead of 42mm dinner plates. Sometimes you get modern materials like sapphire crystals or ceramic bezels instead of fragile acrylic or aluminum that are seen with vintage models. You've also got more serviceable movements as well, such as the Seiko NH35 or Miyota 9000 series, that certainly won't cost you 8 kidney to repair. And sometimes, configurations the big brands would never dare to release. Different colors, loom styles, or patina effects. In other words, you get the feel of vintage or luxury without the pain of that ownership, or the anxiety of scratching a $20,000 grail. There's also the test drive effect. A lot of collectors buy a clomage as a low-risk way to see if they really enjoy a Submariner, a Daytona, or a 62 MES on their wrist before making the big purchase. And finally, clomage brands often serve up revived back catalog designs, watches that Rolex, Omega, or Seiko aren't making anymore. Think of it as a parallel to what brands like Longines and Tudor officially do with their heritage lines. Only here, it's these clomage brands that are filling the gap. That's why clomages keep selling, and that's why the brands we're about to talk about have built whole catalogs around them. Let's start with Duxot, a brand under Dartmouth Brands, incorporated in the UK, but ultimately owned by Solar Time Limited, a Hong Kong-based watch group. This is the same parent company behind Spinnaker, AV8, and Ballast. Now, Spinnaker and AV8 began life as fashion watches. Big, bold designs, quartz movement, heavy marketing. But over time, they've steadily improved to include automatic options, original case designs, sapphire crystals, better loom, and perhaps surprisingly, genuine respect among enthusiasts for their pretty quirky, interesting aesthetics. Duxot, though, chose an entirely different path. Instead of carving out originality, it leaned hard into clomages. Their catalog is basically a greatest hits playlist. Daytona lookalikes, Seamaster-inspired divers, Nautilus-style integrated bracelet pieces, and even Royal Oak riffs. If you recognize a watch from a Sotheby's catalog, odds are you'll find a Duxot cousin with a slightly different logo. It's as if Dartmouth realized that there was an audience who didn't want another inspired by a brand like Spinnaker, but instead wanted a direct pipeline to watches they already admired. It's cheaper, easier to wear, and available in more colors, finishes, and configurations. and Duxot delivers that unashamedly. Next up, Steinhart, often considered the godfather of clomages. Founded in 2001 in Augsburg, Germany, Steinhart built its reputation on the Ocean One series, essentially the best submariner you can buy without a Rolex logo. The resemblance was, and really still is, so close that Steinhart became both infamous and beloved. To some, it's lazy imitation. To others, it's democratization. A Swiss-made automatic diver with solid specs for under 500 euros. Over time, Steinhart has experimented. Bronze cases, titanium divers, Flieger watches, but the submariner-like remains the backbone. It pays the bills, and it's why the brand is known worldwide. One thing in their favor, Steinhart has earned respect for quality. They offer ETA and Salita movements, Swiss build, good finishing, and great value. Many collectors own a Steinhart at some point in their journey, and for a lot of enthusiasts, it's a great gateway into mechanical watches. Then we have Hitori watches, a newer entrant with a distinctly Japanese identity, or at least the appearance of one. Their branding leans heavily on Japanese culture. Cherry blossom names, talk of heritage, and a very grand Seiko-esque aesthetic. But if you peel back the lacquer, things look quite different. The contact page points to Gnomon watches in Singapore, a well-known online dealer. Community discussions and shipping addresses all suggest Hitori is actually a Gnomon house brand, designed and marketed from Singapore, with production across Asia. Their debut, the Ryukyu Diver, was a clear salute to the Seiko 62 MAS, flat, functional Crownet 3 skin diver lines. But unlike the fragile vintage Seikos, the Ryukyu came with sapphire, ceramic, solid construction, and a workhorse Japanese automatic movement. Basically the 62 MAS, but one you could swim with daily. Not too different from anything you could find from a Chinese factory AliExpress brand. Where things get a little spicier are the Meguro and Yoshino collections. These are almost dead ringers for Grand Seiko sports models and the 44GS case design, down to dimensions and finishing cues. Hitori isn't just borrowing. I'd say in some situations it's straight up cloning. And that's why they've been both celebrated and criticized. At the same time, they've experimented with quirky, limited editions that lean more into design play than cloning. Some miss, some hit. But Hitori's story is a great example of how Japanese-inspired branding can sometimes be more about marketing than geography. Finally, we come to WMT, short for Watch Experimental Unit. Based in Hong Kong and founded by Alan Shroom, WMT is almost theoretical about its clomage identity. Their entire ethos is about customization, patina, and vintage on demand. The lineup is a love letter to mid-century Rolex. The Royal Marine channels the Big Crown subs and mill subs. Sea divers reference skin divers, and the Barracuda and Seawolf dig into the 50s and 60s dive aesthetics. Lastly, the Chrono Club pays homage to vintage chronographs as well. But the real magic here is customization. WMT lets you build your own vintage fantasy. Pick bezel inserts, glit or tropical dials, handsets, bracelets, and even how much artificial patina you want. They literally offer hand-aged variants, charging a premium, often about 25% or more, for dials, bezel, and lume treated to look like they've spent decades in the tropics. This makes WMT a little bit unique. They're not just selling you a sub lookalike, they're selling you the experience of discovering a perfectly aged vintage watch without the cracked gaskets, water damage, or four-figure service bill. But WMT isn't just about carbon copy replicas. Where things get really interesting, in my opinion, and where their originality really shines, is in their Green Label line. The series takes the familiar and gives it a twist of satire and art. Think of it as clomage meets pop art. Instead of faithfully recreating Rolex classics, WMT reinterprets them with playful design choices. Pixel art dials that look like they've been pulled from an 8-bit video game, hand-drawn typography, quirky mismatched hands, and bezels that wink at collectors who know the source material. Take, for example, this reinterpretation of the Rolex GMT Master Coke, reference 16710. At first glance, you'll see the familiar red and black bezel and the classic GMT case silhouette, but then the details jump out. The dial looks like it's been sketched on by a stylist, paired with a quirky pixel art handset, dial furniture, and bezel indicators. The whole piece feels like a cheeky remix rather than a clone. It's parody in watch form, a mashup of reverence and irreverence. This is where WMT proves that clomage doesn't always mean soulless copying. For enthusiasts, their watches serve multiple different purposes. They're wearable alternatives to 5-figure Rolexes, test bits for experimenting with patina and vintage looks, and, in the case of the Green Label line, conversation pieces that wink at watch culture itself. WMT has effectively expanded the clomage category by showing it can be playful, ironic, and even artistic, something you don't often get from other players in this space. So where does that leave us? Clomages occupy a strange place in watch culture. They aren't original, they aren't even fully counterfeit, but they clearly answer a real desire in the hobby: affordability, wearability, experimentation, and nostalgia. Some collectors see them as cynical. Others see them as fun, approachable, and perhaps even educational. Whatever your stance, it's hard to deny that clomages have become a permanent fixture in the ecosystem. And whether it's Duxot's shameless catalogue, Steinhart's workhorse gateway, Hitori's Japanese cosplay, or WMT's customizable fancy machines, each one highlights a different reason collectors keep coming back to the gray zone between clomage and homage. But what do you think? Are clomages harmless fun, or are they cheap imitations holding the hobby back? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, I'd love to hear from you. And if you've enjoyed this deep dive, don't forget to like and subscribe for more watch content right on time. I'll see you in the next one.